Hello everybody, welcome to part 2 of my 221B Baker Street tutorial. This is Jen from Scrapping Posh, and we are starting off where we left off on part 1. What I'm doing now is most of the details for the front of the building, and I'll do the windows for the back of the building. I will also do the sub shop and the awning in this video. So probably all the most difficult elements are in this video. Now what I'm doing now is getting the door frame and the door ready. Looking up a reference photo of the door. It's kind of iconic. So I have a frame that goes on top of this rectangle door cutout that makes it look like there are wood panels. Kind of just a detail. And then I had cut out the backing to the doorway and put that frame over it there. Now what I'm doing is I am cutting a small slit in that doorway on the right side of the frame, and that is so I can put a hinge in there so the door opens and closes. And here I am placing that hinge, and later on I redo this and I make the hinge bigger because I was really not happy with the way the door opened and closed. And then I'll just glue that part on, and then I put the door frame over it, and that door frame has the window cut on it. And then I have two other door frames that don't have the window cut on it, and it's just so that it looks like it's a three-dimensional and it looks like molding around the door. So I'll put those on, and after those are on, I'll put the door on. Okay, so I'm using these sticky dots again, and I think next time I'll just use glue for this application anyways. You can see the struggle is real. Okay, now I'm finally putting the door on here, and I'll do details for the door later after the whole front is done. Now this is a cut for the sub shop, windows and doors, and if you haven't watched my first video yet, this cut file I created in the studio, the Cameo Silhouette Studio software, and it's available on my blog in the free download section, www.scrappingposh.blogspot.com. And this is probably, this and the awning are the most difficult parts of this whole thing. And this is difficult because it has the frames between the windows are probably only about 1/16 of an inch thick, and you have to score. Well, they're perforated, but you have to score and fold. And of course, the fold wants to go to the path of least resistance, which would be where the windows are instead of where the perforations are. So it just takes a lot of patience to get this. It is possible. I did it. So, and then also on this door, I am going to add acetate to the windows, And actually, I add the acetate to the windows and realize that that bottom section is supposed to be like a wood panel. So I actually take the acetate off and then add the wood panel right there. Now, if you don't want to, if this is just too much for you, you can absolutely just make that a different color, or do a different door cutout and maybe some window cutouts, and it can look like a sub shop and not have to be as three-dimensional as I made it here. It's very possible to do that. And if you don't use the Cameo cut file and you use just, if you make your own, I suggest making the window frames a bit more beefy. Now I am cutting out the door, and I backed the windows on the door with vellum instead of acetate to match the windows that are going to be on the building itself. So here I'm just finishing up putting the acetate in the windows and trimming it up. Now I'm going to take the frame around, well, I guess, okay, so first I'm going to do the windows, and basically I do the same thing with the windows as I did with the door. I'm just going to use sticky dots. I'm going to put the windows on the sticky dot and put them on the vellum and cut them out. And that's for the front, and then for the back I use pattern paper instead of vellum because it's less visible. So these are the ones that are going to go on the back. And that pattern paper there is from the 12 by 12 pattern in solids. Okay, so now I'm just going to trim these out. I'm going to put the first couple on camera, and then I am going to skip. So this first window has two sections. The big window, it has a top section and a bottom section, just like a real window would have. And I try a couple different ways to get these windows to stick. One is just by using glue around the frame, which is ultimately the way that I do the rest of them. I try this vellum adhesive, and it just doesn't work very well. You can see where the adhesive is. It's not clear at all. So yeah, for the rest of them, I just use glue. You can see that big glob of vellum adhesive right in the middle of that window. So yeah, I'm not happy about that. So I just use glue for the rest of the windows, just going around the outside and trying to avoid the vellum. And you'll see me with a wet cloth here, just try and keep the glue off the pattern paper so that it doesn't turn shiny and you can see it. So I skipped that part for you guys. Now I'm going on to the sub shop frame, the one that I cut out with the X-Acto knife. It's not perfectly cut out because I did use an X-Acto knife on the chipboard. So by using this frame from the 12 by 12 pattern papers, I can kind of fix my mistakes by just making sure that it's square. And then I use a black permanent marker to go along the inside so that it looks, all the chipboard look like shadows instead of actually chipboard where I cut it. Now I just do the three sides because the bottom side will be covered by a step. Now on this cut of the sub shop door, there are panels to the left and right that are to glue the whole thing onto the back of the building. So that's what the big black panels are to the left and the right of those doors. Now I need a bottom and a top for that sub shop because it is three-dimensional. So I'm just taking some scrap paper and getting the correct size, and then I will cut the top and bottom out of chipboard. So here I'm just taking washi tape and covering that chipboard. Basically, I use this washi tape for wherever I think it would be, like a concrete or stone. And I just use that for the top and bottom. And then I glue just one side of the sub shop on. Make sure the door is in the right place so that I can add the top and bottom on. And I just glue that directly to the chipboard. I'm just fixing up some spots here. Okay, and here I am, just put some glue right underneath that door on the top, and I do the same for the bottom, and just put that chipboard directly on there. Now I finish up the frame, or I finish up the sub shop by gluing the other side down and trimming that excess off, and then I use a lot of washi tape to reinforce the door while the glue is drying. And at this point in time, I wasn't really expecting for you to be able to see the inside of the sub shop. I was going to block it off with a piece of chipboard, but later on I decide that I do want you to be able to see inside the sub shop. So I wouldn't leave washi tape stuck all over the back of that if that's your intention, because it would have been a lot easier to keep it cleaned up than to go back after all the walls are on and try and make it look like like I had intentionally done that. So now I just put a border strip on to separate the bottom floor from the top floors. And just using the reference photo here. And I'm looking to begin the awning. Now there's these quarter circles, which is what I use to give the awning its correct size. And because the sub shop is three-dimensional now, I'm using these Tim Holtz ink pads to hold up my sub shop so that it doesn't smash while I'm trying to put this stuff together. Now while those quarter circles are drying, because I just glued them pieces of cardstock straight onto the building at a 90-degree angle, they really need to dry before I mess with them because there's no gussets or anything holding them on. So I'm just putting some 1/4-inch strips together for the steps and covering those with washi tape just like I did the inside of the sub shop. And then I will glue those directly at a 90-degree angle also to the building, and the glue holds all these things in place. You do not need gussets for this part of the project. So like I said, I'm going to glue these steps down. Now the steps right underneath the sub shop are short and only go under the sub shop, and then about a 1/4 inch under that I have a step that goes all the way across the bottom. So the steps are about a 1/4 inch. So the steps are on, or at least part of the steps are on. I'll finish it later. And the quarter circles are dry for the awning. So now I'm going to try and put braces across the top of the awning so that that piece actually has something to sit on. Now, this does not work. I use all these different pieces of paper to fold the corners down to glue them on the semicircles, and it's too loose. So I'm going to slow down the video here in a little bit so that you guys can see me construct this, because like I said, it's kind of hard. The most difficult part probably, and you guys can see kind of what I've done. So I keep this part sped up because I actually end up cutting these off. This is the awning cutout from the cut file, and I just wrap it around a permanent marker to give it a curl and dampen it a little with a wet rag and let it dry. So essentially I use the same principle as these braces between the two semicircles for something for the awning to hold on to. But at the end, I end up putting washi tape on it instead of using these papers. So here I slow it down for you. And you can probably, if you don't want to watch me do this, you can probably go to about 25 minutes. I'm going to put you guys on some music and just let you watch this if you need reference. And I'll be back before the end of the video. Okay, now because I didn't check my measurements before I put the two semicircles on either side, I ended up um, being about 3/16 of an inch too long for the awning that was cut out in my silhouette. So I took a piece of pattern paper, the black and white check, and put that on, made it a little bit wider, and then glued that onto the awning so that I still had the scallops on the bottom. Now I just stretched washi tape across there so it had something to hang on to and glued that awning on directly onto the washi tape. I also run a bead of glue along the top of the awning just to give it a little bit of extra hold because I'm going to put a patio or a railing above it so you won't be able to see that. So while that's drying, I'm just going to put border strips on the remainder of the sides. And this is pretty much going to conclude part 2 of this tutorial. And if you are still interested in watching how this is finished being put together and decorated, please stay tuned for part 3. I will try and get it up faster than I did part 2. I had some audio difficulty, so I appreciate everybody watching, and please feel free to comment for questions. Thanks again. Bye bye.